Mark, my friend, I haven't seen you since Miami, I think, if that's right, right? When all like the B2B marketing gurus like yourself were huddled up here for a little bit and we're talking shop and having fun. So it's good to see you again. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Likewise, man. Thanks for having me on. And the funny part is like as you get older, just like before the show, we were bonding about like some like gut issues and like
Yeah.
our new routines now, and like being off like coffee, alcohol, like talking about bone broth and supplements and doing cleanses. And it's just like this is how my podcasts start now. Back in the day, I was like, oh, like what's new and exciting with you? What's going on? What's the latest? How was that campaign? And now it's like, man, it's like is your arm okay? It's like, how's your health? Are you doing? And we're all like, oh, like those kids on my lawn. But I think that's just like the nature of life right now. So I don't know,
True.
man. It's I'm glad to catch up, and it's been way too long. We're gonna make this more common, man.
Absolutely. Well, my common theme the last couple years has been this like thread of spirituality that I've just been diving in. So it's awesome because like everyone that I would say 99.5% of the people that speak to, and I maybe mention something related to some sort of mindful topic or whatever, they all get it, and that tells me that we're all connected and we all get it. So I don't think there are any coincidences in life.
No, and I think it's the same way that like there's a reason why memes and humor works on even professional platforms like LinkedIn. And it's because at the heart of its core, it's actually the closest product marketing that you can get. And it's like whoever gets closer to the customer and understanding that you can like show your audience that you really know them, like that you can empathize with their pain, that you've lived it. It's basically a trauma bonding. And this is like our adult version of trauma bonding. So like I know we'll talk about LinkedIn and things like that, but at the end of the day, it's like I truly do believe that you don't need to have the most like buttoned up professional dear sir, dear ma'am content to win in B2B. You need to show your audience that you are like authentic, relatable, understand them, and can like meet them where they are in a way that's actually like creates an opt-in experience for them to follow your
Yeah.
brand and want to like be part of your journey.
Yeah, well, that reminds me of a conversation I had on the show recently with Udi, who is the founding marketer over at Gong. And he was like, when everybody was like super buttoned up with their B2B marketing and branding, we were like your best friend in your ear, talking to you about how to be a better salesperson, but from a very like fun, humorous type of position. And he's like, when everyone had like stock images, we had like a dog, and you
Yeah.
remember all the colors and stuff that Gong
Yeah.
had. So that reminds me of that, and I think that it's pretty clear they've done pretty well in our space.
Yeah, and I mean, it's funny. So, like, Udi and I go way back. For folks who don't know, I used to host a hot sauce sales show. So it was basically like hot ones on YouTube, but for B2B go-to-market leaders. And, we were, I'd say, like the first in market to do this really well. We reached over like 1 million people on LinkedIn in our first like 3 to 4 months of the show. We had like 200 guests lined up, and we actually ran what was called the Gong Gauntlet. So we had Sarah Brazier, Eric Lindros, so many folks, including the marketing team at Gong, basically come through. And then it was such a hit that we had Udi on as part of our like C-suite episode. And here was the thing. Gong had just done their first Super Bowl commercial. Okay. And everyone in media and B2B wanted to interview Udi about how it went and what they learned. Who was the first show he came on? The first person to drop the news? Like because it's like one, the timing was there, but like Udi understood the value of like edutainment at that time. We're living
Mm.
in a post-COVID world. Everyone's doing Zoom webinars. There's massive fatigue. What do people want? It's like they want an outlet to like let go of some stress. They want to just like find a way that they can, bond. Again, trauma bonding over like sales content, some pain, and some hot sauce. And, we became the first show that Gong talked about their Super Bowl results, how they did it, the campaign and everything. And it's like, it goes to show you that, you don't need to be the CMO at some like massive company. You just need like good connection and a good premise. Like think let your creativity do your heavy lifting, not your budget. I think so many marketing teams and leaders think that like you need a massive budget to drive and build early on, but you really just need like a creative differentiator as a wedge and then a good distribution to make that happen.
Well, speaking of LinkedIn and everything that you're doing right now, maybe you can talk a little bit about what Authority is focusing on and, what kind of companies you're working with and what you're doing for them.
Yeah, for sure. So in the last 6 months, my partner Daniel Murray and I, if you know Daniel Murray from the Marketing Millennials, just hit 1 million followers recently on LinkedIn. Now the number one sort of largest marketing media platform in the entire world on LinkedIn. And him and I have been good friends. We've gone way back. We've worked together at many companies now. And part of sort of what we've done in our career is build LinkedIn media arms, build our personal brands. And we noticed that there was so much demand in the market for founders, leaders, and company pages to grow on LinkedIn and use that as your wedge to build a media arm and a competitive advantage. But one of the problems was most people were selling ghostwriting. And the problem with ghostwriting is that ghostwriting is a trap and it's a flawed system. And from our point of view, it's like typically what happens is you pay some company with high expectations, then they outsource your work to some writer, paying them, like an hourly rate. Some guy in Nebraska with 400 followers in a basement who's like never been a career marketer, never built an audience, doesn't know media, right? Doesn't know your product. And it's like you go from this situation of being like super excited to like, why is this content not working for me? And we heard it over and over and over again. So Daniel and I basically built a new premise that we called Authority B2B, which was ghost marketing. And the reason why it worked was because Daniel and I have built, our career as marketers. Recently, like I was the VP of marketing for a $3 billion company. He was at Service Titan and Clearbit. And like we both understand marketing, not just social, right? We have the largest marketing media arm and go to market arm on LinkedIn. Collectively, we've done more than 1 billion impressions on LinkedIn. I do 1 million impressions a week right now on my own personal content. And we developed a unique way to help like founders, leaders, and company pages stand out. We actually like just ran one of our like H2 like QBRs in the last 5 months. All of our clients have averaged somewhere between 1 million to 4 million impressions per month. We've done
Wow.
101.3 million impressions in under 5 months across our net new clients at Authority. And we've minted more new top 1% LinkedIn creators than anyone that I know. And all of this comes down to the fact that like, again, it's ghost marketing. Daniel and I, we don't outsource. We're managing all of this content silently for some of the top SaaS brands, Cloud 100s, startups, everything in between. But it just like, I think it's our ikigai, the intersection of like what you love doing, what you're good at and like what the market needs. And I kind of just like found the thing where, I get to build with my best friend and have fun doing it. And it's been a blast so far. So that's the TLDR. If anyone wants to learn more, you can shoot me a DM or check us out at authorityb2b.com.
Well, well, so many things there. I particularly enjoyed you mentioning that it is the intersection of like work and monetizing life, right? But also something that you really enjoy. You post, you sort of alluded to it, a lot of great content all the time that I'm following. And there were a couple posts that you shared that suggested that LinkedIn had become the number one B2B growth channel, period. Like hard stop there. Why do you think that this is the case? And like, how do you think CMOs should approach developing their LinkedIn strategy at a high level? Of course, ultimately hire y'all to do so, but any sort of high level concept, especially when they're like, well, I don't know. I don't know if that's where I should spend my time. I got a limited budget, do more with less, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I'll skip past the LinkedIn part because like I think the data and some of the studies are they speak for themselves. Most people who are engaging probably see the value in LinkedIn. We can kind of touch on that piece. The piece that I think is the most important for the audience is like the structure, the tactics, and like the overall approach. So the framework that I tend to use, and it's based on the stat, which is about 95 to 97% of B2B buyers are actually not buyers yet. They're not ready to buy, right? It's literally only 3 to 5% actively in your market are shopping. But here's the challenge. Most B2B companies, they have so much pressure to hit their goals, typically because they're VC funded. So they have a valuation that's probably over where they're pacing for their product and their readiness. So what they do is they end up spending a lot more on paid sponsoring events, like trying to capture existing demand. And existing demand is finite. There's only a set amount of existing demand. The same is true on search, which is why if there's X number of search impressions and there's people bidding, it's like you're going to have very competitive cost per click. And the same is true with when you try to capture demand versus trying to create it. And this is the challenge. Too many of these marketers try to spend their way out of it, and they end up hitting significant diminishing returns because you're competing over the same number of people that are in the market. There's more and more people entering that space, and it becomes a cycle where it doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is if you actually look at like the payback period, like the cost per acquisition versus your payback period. So like not just your CAC to LTV, but like your actual like CAC payback period. I know B2B companies where it's like 5.7 years. It's like no PE company, like literally like having looked at the data, no PE company is ever going to put a single dollar in your business because like that is not a sustainable business model unless your net rev retention is like 197% or something insane, which is very, very rare. So what typically happens then is like, okay, well, there's so much pressure. They're going to focus on those 3 to 5%, and they ignore the 95 to the 97%. And you brought up a good example, which is Gong. There were about 17 players in the market with almost identical technology to what Gong was building. And the reason why Gong won and went on to a multi-billion-dollar valuation, soon to IPO when the market softens up, versus the others, you look at like Chorus, got bought by ZoomInfo, right, for cents on the dollar versus the valuation. All the others that have basically fallen into either like acqui-hires, Oblivion, Sunset, or just kind of, bootstrap of 2 people, it's because Gong invested in the 95 to 97% in building their brand. And a big part of that was their LinkedIn strategy, right? Devin Reed, Chris Orlov, the original team. So here's the framework that you should be thinking about from a LinkedIn perspective. You want to have your company brand, like your basically like your company entity, converting those 3 to 5%, right? Your company should be designed as the thing where you can invest to help convert. Then what you want to have is you want to have your actual personal like brands within your team. So basically like think of this layer as like the people like me, for example, every company that I've been in, I've built my brand and used my brand as an extension of what we talk about our audience. So think about that of like investing in your people and the personal brand engines in your business. Then what you want to do is you want to have your media arm. So your media arm could be another non-branded outlet. It could be how you're thinking about like your content, but the goal of your media arm is to basically build a following and grow engaged attention with the right ideal customers. And if you think about this like in a ladder up way, people buy from people they know, like, and trust. So think about that ladder. How do they know you? You've built a media arm and you've built personal brands so that you're showing up in the feed and adding value in a way where people like that Mark guy. I've seen him post like, yeah, like I've seen him before. I've seen him talk like, so they're aware that I exist, right? There's some awareness. Then it's like, okay, well, how do they like me? Well, people come for your content. They return for your personality, right? You talk about Bruno, the dog at Gong. You talk about like the humor. You talk about relating with the audience. That was the Gong personality, the extension of the personal brands at Gong. That was their strategy of humanizing in a very like blah to blah B2B sales world of stock photos. And they're like, we're going to have fun and make this a place that you want to go. People came back for Gong's personality. So that's investing in your personal brand. Then it's like, okay, why should I trust Gong? Like, how do I bridge that gap from like and know to trust? It's like Gong invested in what Amanda over at SparkToro has coined, which is a great term. It's called like 0-click content. So content that shows up in your feed that you do not have to click anywhere out to leave to get value. And a friend of mine has this great take, if you're familiar with the psychology of Pavlov, like Pavlov's dog, when ring a
Classical
bell.
conditioning and all that.
Correct. And the dog would
Yeah.
salivate. Your job as a marketer is to be Pavlov for your ideal customers. When they see you in the feed, immediately that should trigger like that, oh, I need to read this. This is going to be good. You need to create this loop of adding so much 0-click value that you've become like they're salivating when they see you in the feed. Because what happens is, what did Gong do? Gong went and took all of their data and built Gong Labs and made sure that every 2 weeks, there was a great in-depth piece in your feed about tactical things you could do driven by data to be a better seller. And they made it fun, they made it interesting, like they brought edge and personality to it. So do you see the pyramid that they've laddered up here? People are like easy to see it on the surface, but there's a real structure, there's intention, and there wasn't just like they had a marketing budget. They had a media budget for the people not ready to buy, right? They had a budget they invested in brands and talent. And then they had obviously what they invested in the more traditional way of like converting and capturing existing demand. But that's how you create demand. They built a wedge and a moat that no one could beat because everyone else was playing defense, capturing demand. They were playing offense, building demand silently in a way that no one could replicate, right? And like it's something that I could talk about for like 6 hours, but fundamentally that is the premise that most B2B companies get wrong about LinkedIn is they don't invest in like growing an engaged audience because they think it's a fluffy vanity metric when really it is like the key thing and what your competitors are probably silently doing now that you don't know that's helping them build a moat that you won't be able to overcome the same way that Gong did.
Wow. I think you should mic drop right there. I don't even know that we should continue, but I did have a couple other questions. One thing that comes to mind is this idea of social selling, right? Like my buddy Coca Sexton. I don't know if you know Coca, but he used to be at LinkedIn years ago. And he was the first person who I actually ever heard use that terminology of social selling. And what would you say is the key to aligning sales and marketing, right? Because I've seen a lot of like organizations who have really struggled with that alignment in general, not just on LinkedIn and the social stuff, right? So, sales and marketing has been an alignment has been an issue for a long time, but particularly as it relates to like what we are considering that social selling LinkedIn strategy. How do you? And I know this is a big question, but maybe some initial tips on making sure that sales is marketing and marketing is aligned and it's not this like sales is going
Yeah.
rogue and then upsetting marketing and the whole nine, right? Which, look, I get that works in certain organizations, but you know as well as I do that to have something that the organization is going to invest real resources in, there has to be alignment, right?
Yes. And the simplest way to think about it, which is simple but not easy, is that revenue is a team sport. And there's a reason why you're hearing less people talk about like sales and marketing and more people talk about go to market and revenue in the title. It's because we've seen a fundamental gap in how B2B SaaS and even B2B in general has evolved. Previously, marketing was very much a function that in many cases early on was much more siloed from sales. And the only way that I've seen like the best companies like bridge this gap is uniting the teams under a clear North Star and having clear cross-functional goals where it's like it basically stops this problem. And I'll break it down of like the typical thing that happens in most SaaS companies. Marketing is given some like waterfall metric from a board meeting of like, okay, here's our average contract value, here's our win rate. Therefore, here's our goal for this quarter. So we need 3.7x pipeline coverage. So marketing, you have to drive marketing qualified leads at this pipeline coverage to hit this thing. And marketing in a silo goes, okay, these are the marketing goals. We're responsible. We'll run some ads. We'll run some campaigns. We'll do A, B, and C. We'll hit our MQL pipeline goal. Okay. Then sales are like, okay, here's your number. Here's what you have to sell. Here's our win rate. Here's our ACV. Again, exact same math. So it's like you need to be working X many deals per day at this win rate. Like, okay. And then sales and marketing go off in their separate ways and they're sprinting towards this thing. And what happens is you'll have like the marketing team celebrate 73 days into the quarter for hitting their MQL goal. We're like, great, we hit our pipeline goal, we did it, great. And then you look over and sales are like, we're 37% to quota. Why are you celebrating? And the disconnect is because there isn't a sort of a unified approach around like, okay, well, pipeline is not created equal. It's like the same marketers who might be spending time capturing demand on search, let's say. Maybe that person has never heard of your brand, never seen your content, has no idea. It's like the pipeline you generate is not created equal. So unless you have a really strong weighted pipeline, like regular syncs with sales and marketing, where you actively are looking at this and understanding and starting to actually think about like your demand creation, it's like when we used to create demand, people had seen our brand and our content for 5, 6, 8, 12 months. Those people came to us as the only solution that they wanted to purchase from. Maybe there was one other, but it's like they already came there. Our sales cycle was like 67% faster than any other net new from any other source. Our ACV was higher. Our retention was better. Our expansion was better. Everything was better. And when we looked at that, we said, okay, how do we come together as like a revenue team and actually look at the kinds of opportunities we need to be driving? Like, what does great look like? And I worked under a really great CRO, Tony Jackson. He has 4 IPOs under his belt: Snowflake, Tableau, Mongo, 3 actually, and didn't end up going for the 4th, but could have. And the thing that I learned from him was like, we met so much more regularly as one team with one goal. And it wasn't like marketing celebrated MQLs and sales celebrated success. It was like the revenue team. And a key part of this was like everyone in our sales org and our leadership were invested in doing what we were doing together as a go-to-market org, building their brands on LinkedIn, sharing our strategic narrative from our founder point of view, and building. And there's a ton of like tactics you can do here, but like the simplest thing comes down to not being siloed in your measurement, investing in what makes sense. Again, don't become like a slave to a dashboard. I think too many go-to-market leaders end up becoming smart but lazy dashboard leaders, and they lose the common sense of like, hey, our LinkedIn sourced opportunities, again, have much higher ACV, faster win rate, less competitors. It's like, yet we're not investing in building our brands or our people because it doesn't show up on a dashboard that I can take to the board meeting. Well, actually, it does. Go and take a single open text field in your forms or whatever you're doing and ask a required question about like, hey, like tell me one sentence about like how you heard about us. Because what happens is like most marketers look at attribution and it's like, oh, Google search. It's like, they probably saw your content for 6 months and then typed you into Google and clicked Google. And even your attribution model, if it's like last touch or blended touch or whatever, it doesn't matter unless you actually ask them on the call in their discovery in the notes. People end up chasing shiny objects and investing in just demand capture instead of like demand creation. So when you get the whole team aligned and like building, that's really like the key difference. It's probably like literally its own whole episode. So I'll pause there, but like, it's just about getting on the same team and not thinking about it as silos and like really just like doing it together.
Incredible. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing this wisdom and these insights. One of the things that came to mind was a blog post that I'm writing right now on the buyer journey. And, I know we have the kind of like popular categories: awareness and consideration and, decision or whatever, like as at least based on my research and what I've seen, these are like the top sort of ways to categorize it. But I thought about it also even before that there are 2 bigger kind of methods or ways that customers or prospects enter a buyer journey to begin with. And it's either like initiated by what I call the customer centric or customer initiated entry point into that buyer journey, and then there's the vendor initiated, right? And one thing that I did write in that post, which will go out in whatever, a couple of weeks or whatnot, is that there is this like gray area, right? There's a blurry line. So to your point, in an organization or a stakeholder within that organization might have been observing or seeing posts from you on LinkedIn for months and months and months. And then that influenced the inbound, right? That was the search, on Google or some other channel, right? So just something for folks to keep in mind. Mark, this was awesome, man. Like, I am so fired up from hearing you speak about this topic. Just to wrap up here, any hot takes on the current state of B2B influencer marketing? And then I had another question which is related, like, should everyone within your organization strive to be an influencer. From the external, speaking to Gong a couple times throughout this episode, it feels like almost like everyone is somewhat of an influencer there. Is that actually reality? Is that just a perception that I've had? And what's your take on that question?
Yeah, so I'll hit the last part first, which is one of the best things you can do, especially early on as a growing startup, is you want to position yourself as bigger than you are, right? Like think about an ant. Ants can lift more than 100 times their weight. What happens when you saturate the feed and are there all the time? Airtable had a great play about this early on that a lot of people like gave them flack for, which was actually really smart, which was like Airtable as an early company that didn't have a ton of credibility was competing against really big known players in the market, right? It's like you were trying to uproot some of the existing like spreadsheet and like table tools that people have been using for like decades. So what Airtable did, which is really smart and kind of the same thing that, Gong did with how they approached LinkedIn, that did Drift and other places, but Airtable went and bought generic billboards in high ticket cities like San Francisco. And the reason they did this is because when people would see their content and walk by these billboards, they would have this mental perception of like, only a big company can afford to put up this generic one-line billboard everywhere in like the airport. And they literally pick these small pockets during like conference season and stuff like that. So it basically created social trust in this unique way where people saw Airtable as like a credible brand that they could buy from because it felt much bigger than they were. And the same was true even in the early days of Gong. So it's like, I think the wrong question is like, should everyone be an influencer? The right question is like, how do you get deeper to your customer? And one of the reasons why we tend to manage somewhere between like 1 to 4 accounts for our clients, usually like a founder, a go-to-market leader, a company page, and then sometimes like a product leader, a talent leader, something like that. Everyone has a unique point of view on your story. So if you think about this as like a sundae, the best sundae is not a tub of vanilla ice cream. It's vanilla, it's caramel, it's nougat, it's a little bit of fudge, maybe it's some great whipped cream, a little like hazelnut foam. Man, I'm hungry. And think about this from the perspective of like
All the things we can't eat, right?
I know. Like my dairy intolerance, all these
Yeah,
things. I gotta go
totally.
have bone broth, athletic greens, and like protein powder after this. So it's like so hype for my life. But think about this as like when you create for LinkedIn, your account executive can speak to an end user who's an account executive about how they use your product, their stories, the tactics they've learned, like what they're doing in their sales cycle, what's working. Your head of product can speak about the vision of the category, where they see things going, where some of the opportunities are, and like the key problems that they're seeing from like the 1-star negative reviews their competitors have in this space and how they're thinking about building and tapping into that emotional connection that people have. Your CEO and founder can speak to the larger strategic narrative in the industry, where things are going, the culture, becoming a talent magnet. One of the things that was fascinating for me, and this was an interesting, anecdote, I had someone actually leave the Gong team during kind of prime time from their growth marketing team to join an early stage startup when we were like 20 people because they had been following my content for a long time. Right. They left the rocket ship that was gone to come join a new startup. And that was because they were passionate about what they saw me and the team talking about and building. So one of the best things that you can do with like your head of talent, your head of people is like become a talent magnet. 50% of what you would do and the hardest thing you will do, and it's a great quote from Steve Jobs if you want to look up this interview at some point, anyone listening. People asked him like, what's the hardest thing that you've ever done? What's the hardest thing you've built? It was like, was it the Mac? Was it the iPhone? Was it whatever? And he goes, it was the people. He's like, 50% of what I did was finding the great people that would build these things. And a big part of that is building your brand and being different so you become that talent magnet. And literally one of the best things that you can do for LinkedIn for, I would say 99.7% of all of my hires have been inbound and referral who have come to me saying like, at some point, even if it's not now, I need for us to work together because of A, B, and C. And when I would start at a new company or go somewhere, it's like you're not starting from zero. Literally the best thing you can do. And a friend of mine, James Carberry over at Sweetfish, folks, check him out. James, a great point of view. He's for his 2-year-old. He said the best gift that you can give someone today, family, whatever it is an engaged audience. He's building a YouTube show for his 2-year-old with fun animal facts on YouTube with him and his wife so that the same way that like we have leverage with the media arms we have and the 1.5 million followers collectively on LinkedIn, your media arm and your attention is power today, right? Think about all of the people when you think of that word influencer. It's like how we buy has changed. There's a ton of amazing data on like how Gen Z are giving up on classic search and are looking at social search like TikTok and other things. And I know we're at like times, I won't go into the data, but when I think about like my hot take on B2B and LinkedIn, here's a really tactical one that you can end with that I think most people get wrong. And then we'll wrap up with influencer and we can tee it to go eat protein shakes and vitamins. Here's my LinkedIn tip for you. Most people still put their link in their comments when they're trying to drive someone to something else. It is absolutely the wrong thing to do. Here's what you should do instead. Let your post get engagement for about 15 to 20 minutes. Then make sure you have the character count of your post calculated. You can edit your post within 15% of its total character count. I am for 14%, and LinkedIn will not penalize that edit. So what you do is once you have engagement at that 15 or 20 minute mark, you go edit your rehook, the second line of text, and you add your call to action and the link, or you add it at the end of the post. But you need to make sure to shorten that link first in a link shortener, because again, if you wrote 1,000 words, you only have then 140 characters. A non-truncated link, like a long link with UTMs, counts towards that character count in the edit. So shorten it first. Then in like 30 minutes, you can still drop a link to the comments, but you never want to be the first person to comment on your post. You never want to be the first person to immediately drop a link in the comments because LinkedIn flags that behavior as spammy. They know better. This is like one of the easiest hacks to get more engagement to whatever you're trying to drive to. Now, quick basically take on like the state of influencer. I think influencer is the wrong word today. The creator economy is going to hit like $500 billion by 2027 from Goldman Sachs. And we're seeing like literally creator schools like by Samir, where you can study being a creator. There's like this cliche analogy of like the best time to plant a tree was 30 years ago. The second best time is today. I only started building my brand on LinkedIn 4 years ago. My first post got 7 likes and 73 impressions. Now I do 1 million impressions a week, every week on LinkedIn. And that literally just came from me showing up, not being that person. If you don't know what to do or don't feel like you have expertise, curate it. Go borrow credibility from other people. It's like what I did is I went to communities and I brought questions and answers that I didn't have, and I shared them in those learnings. You do not have to be an influencer or have some marvelous point of view to start. You just need to start. So do those two things, do them well, and make it fun. Because like being a creator is hard. The hardest part is like showing up and being consistent. So make sure that you actually like make it fun for yourself or you'll give up. So dude, appreciate you. This was super fun.
Thank you so much, Mark. If folks want to get in contact with you, learn more about how they can hire you to help step up and or build to begin with their LinkedIn strategy, what are the best URLs? I was going to ask handles, but I think LinkedIn speaks for itself.
Yeah, definitely shoot me a connect on LinkedIn, Mark P. Young, and then you can check us out at authorityb2b.com. A big part of the business, and I think what's been great, is we do have a wait list. So we have a pretty long wait list right now. We only take on about 3 to 4 clients per quarter. Because again, Daniel and I are at that point where we want to work with people that like we have fun with, we enjoy, we use the product or like know the product and like get to be really selective. But shoot me a note. Always happy to have a call. And yeah, if you ever want to run back part 2, we'll go down the tactical train for 30 straight minutes and just talk like LinkedIn tactics and how to step it up.
I love it. Let's do it. Well, have a great day. Thank you so much.
Likewise, appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on.